At 9 o'clock, we just hear the jet plane voice that make us like a...
Ali, you know what's happening? Yeah, I was like, what's happening? She's like, there have been sonic booms in this area.
We were at a shopping mall, we were having coffee with friends, and everyone's phone started ringing because something is happening.
You start to receive too much SMS. When I heard that there's a coup, I was just like shaking that.
It became clear that, this was what was happening, that there was actually a coup underway.
The military entered with a crash.
All people, all Turkish people just go in some one way to protect the country.
It really felt like this is going to be much more complicated and much bigger than we expected.
We were just mind blown.
So we could hear the planes, we could hear the gunshots.
It sounded like the police were overwhelmed, the military had taken the bridges.
Everyone that they, regardless of their political background, decided that they will be on one side against the military.
I was on shift at TRT World. At the time, I was a producer. We were in the newsroom. It was a normal night, and there was nothing too out of the ordinary at the beginning of my shift. But then later on, things kind of started to change.
I opened up a television to search for some movies, and I realized that there was something happening. I didn't know at first exactly what it was. I remember just flipping over channels and seeing that there's some kind of action and ambiguity about things that are happening. And then I realized there was a prime minister on the phone talking about something, yeah?
This manager came back inside and he told us that the military is going to be entering TRT World. And it's possible that Turkish people had already understood what was going on before we even realized what was going on. Because many of them have lived through coups in Turkey in the past. Some of them are older people, who lived through the 1980 coup. So while we were sitting there waiting for this to happen, there was a very awkward kind of environment and an awkward sense of ambivalence. People really didn't understand that military was going to enter. But when it happened, the military entered with a crash.
Our family started calling from abroad and asking if we're home, if we're safe, because something is happening in the country. We're here and everyone is sitting around and everything is normal, and all of a sudden people started moving and the cafe asked us to leave, and we rushed to the metro station trying to go home. And at that moment, people were sort of not running around, but people were rushing. And
it got kind of chaotic. People are trying to grab their phones and their bags and their things, their personal belongings. They don't know what to do. And the soldiers actually went into where the studio is. They started pushing around the floor managers. They wanted the door to be open. They went inside. They, took the presenter out and they took everyone out of there. And then they started telling us everyone out, right? They wanted everybody out of the newsroom and out of the building. They didn't really have a plan. It was obvious that they didn't know exactly what they were doing. So they kind of gathered everybody in the lobby, or as many of the people as they could in the lobby. And as we were standing there, the soldiers that were doing the coup, they started talking to each other and they started talking to the managers. They're speaking in Turkish to one another. And it was obvious that there was really high tension there. And the soldiers were not happy, and they were they wanted something from our Turkish colleagues. I didn't understand exactly what was going on, but in the end, basically they told everybody to get out of the building. So they lined us up and they told us to leave. And then outside, there were more soldiers. And outside, when we got to where the truck was and the soldiers were standing, those guys had their guns. Of course, all of them had guns with them, right? But these guys were standing there with their guns, ready to use them, I assume. It was really intimidating, and we didn't know what to expect. So all of this, by the time we're standing outside, it's around 11:30.
And then at that point, there were, dozens of us kind of milling around the parking lot, not understanding what we were supposed to do. We saw some white buses that looked like they were ready to transport us home, but we were all going in many different directions around the city. And suddenly I heard a colleague say, wait, why do they want our phones? And I dropped my phone into my purse at that point, but another colleague actually panicked and said, no, please obey, this is the military. And it made me laugh a bit because this very young soldier came with this kind of tray of, 25 iPhones piled up and just kind of held it out to me like an offering. And I had to put my phone on it. Little did I know that they wanted to stop us from being able to communicate. Anyone getting on social media or sending messages.
And as I'm driving back to the hotel, I get a call from Istanbul where my wife sat with our kids, and she's like, Ali, you know what's happening here? I was like, what's happening? She's like, there have been sonic booms in this area in Harbiye Pangalti for the past half an hour. I don't know what's happening. I get to the hotel, turn the TV on, and it's all about Darbe. We find out that Terete has been taken over by the Coup pushists. We find out that Erdogan is mid-air somewhere. We find out a lot of these details that start coming in, and we start hearing gunshots around this time outside. We still don't know what's going on.
We make a contact with our friends outside that say there's a coup on the bridge, so we should prepare for everything, because I was live in the many revolution, so I just feel that I talk with my wife. We should prepare, so because if this getting worse, it can be bad for the country. So we should prepare everything, and we should like fight for this.
I felt a bit sad that in 21st century you'd have a coup attempt in like one of the biggest countries in the world and in Europe as well. I was not expecting it at all. It came to me as shock because I thought that was in the past for Turkey, and that was in the past for everybody who's in Turkey. That's the first thing I felt, a bit disappointment that this can happen at this day and age.
45 minutes in, we start seeing small groups of people come out on the streets. And just at that time on CNN Turk, Erdogan comes on the screens with a presenter via FaceTime. And he asks people to start coming out into the town squares.
Milletimizi illerimizin meydanlarına davet ediyorum. Havalimanlarına davet ediyorum ve milletçe meydanlarda havalimanında.
Around the same time, we start hearing azan. Now keep in mind, this is around 10 p.m., 10:30 p.m. There's no way, Isha is done. But we start hearing azans right from the mosque right next to the hotel.
Of course, throughout the night, the azan, we could hear the azan from all the mosques around us, and that actually made us feel a bit safer, because that the Turkish people still have some control, and for us this is like our country. So it was really important for us to know that we are safe, that the Turkish people are safe, and that we can keep on living on this land.
So the mosques were calling people out to the street. They were going towards Fatih Sultan Mehmet Bridge. And you could actually see them because they were walking on the road. It's basically an on-ramp, an off-ramp for the highway that leads to the bridge. And you could see people walking. And as time went on, as the evening went on and the time got later in the evening, the number of people increased significantly. And all the while this is happening, there's jets that came and were flying over the bridge. Our house is very near the bridge at that time, so you could feel the house shaking while these jets were flying over. And that lasted for about 45 minutes. half an hour, 45 minutes, I would say they felt really close and you could hear them. They were very loud and you can tell that whoever the pilot was or whoever the pilots were, they were trying to intimidate the people on the bridge to keep them from going and facing off with the tanks, which we could see clearly from where we were. There's tanks and soldiers coming from the Asian side of, the Asian peninsula, and people from the European peninsula coming to face off with these soldiers on the bridge. And these jets were flying over, and you could tell the jets, when they fly, they have this thing that they do where they open up, their exhaust, and they make a really loud sound when they're swooping down. And so they kept doing this repeatedly for about half an hour, 45 minutes. But people kept going to the bridge. And as the evening went on, the calls from the mosques, kept going, and more people went out into the street.
We get out, we agree, stick together, don't move out. And as soon as we get out of the hotel, they're like groups of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 people all coming out and, all charged up. And they're chanting slogans for Erdogan, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, Recep Tayyip Erdogan. And they're all moving towards the Gaziantep square, the Maidan. Nobody knows at this stage where anyone stands except the people that are getting out on the streets after Erdogan's message and making their way to Gaziantep Maidan. And we're tense. Of course, the adrenaline is running fast. Let's go into the Maidan. Let's see what's happening there. And we go to the Maidan. And you can see videos of that on social media, on my social media. And I start going live on Facebook. And you have 50,000 people in the Maidan. It's like completely filled to capacity. All there, all charged up, all chanting slogans.
We didn't know what to do at first, so we had a couple of options here. We could have gone to the place we work, we could have gone to the airport, or we can just, kick back in our neighborhood to see what's going to happen. There is nobody there except the soldiers who closed down the public broadcaster, and obviously the jets were flying very low across over the bridge. So we realized that at any time maybe there's another guy somewhere who can actually give a command that a place should be bombed, maybe where we are or the bridge. So it was a bit terrifying at that point. And I think we stayed there for about an hour, or maybe less, 45 minutes.
We was outside, exactly. We was outside home. That just we continue our work. We come to the bridge. That my friends say, don't go to the bridge because you have children. On my kangaroo, no, we go to the bridge. Then we go over the bridge, and then someone, no, don't go there. You have children. Just go with us. They bring a car. Just we go with us, we go to the President Erdogan place in Kızılkale. We feel everyone just say, Yallah, Bismillah, Allahu Akbar, that's word.
But at this point, I had taken my wife and my newborn child, my niece and my two nieces and my nephew and my sister and my mom, and I had put them all in the bathroom, basically. And I put them in the bathtub because the house was shaking, and these are older buildings, right? And so we could really feel the rumble, and they were really scared. And I didn't know what was gonna happen. I was thinking that it's possible maybe they could come up into our building, take us out of our homes. I was thinking about anything could be possible. And this went on all the way until about 2:30, 3 in the morning, where it felt really intense, okay? Around that time, just before Fajr time, before the morning prayer, even though people were still on the bridge, things felt calmer, even though there were still people on the bridge and the tank was still there and there were still people on the bridge and it was still a tense environment, things felt calmer.
We suddenly realized that this was actually ending. And it was just hours later that we realized we could go to sleep, that it was okay. And we did.
And I knew that something significant had happened, and I knew that people put their life on the line to stop whatever it is that was happening from happening. And I could see that people who were coming back, because now like the situation had kind of de-intensified. And so some people stayed on the bridge, and you could tell some people were coming back. Even later on in the night, some people started coming back, but not everyone. Most of the people started coming back when the sun came out, okay? And you could see when people were coming back that they were happy. People had flags with them. People were laughing, some of them, you know, they were with their families. Even I saw people with like their kids and their wives who had gone to the bridge. And at that point, I was glad that whatever it was over. And it wasn't until later in the morning, actually, where some of our colleagues at TRT actually stood out in front of the building, in the front of the entrance of the building, until the soldiers who had gone into the TRT building, raided the TRT building, actually gave themselves up. And it wasn't until later in the morning, the next morning, that they did that, and TRT was able to go back to broadcast, you know.
When you first see those pictures of soldiers surrounding and surrendering, you realize that okay, we are now in control again. But around 4:35, we realized that, you know, okay, civilians got the control back. This ended well for Turkey and for Turkish democracy.
So in the morning, when I heard that the government prevailed, I was so happy. Because at that stage, I have been in Turkey for 6 years, and this became my second country. And I feel home when I'm in Istanbul. I feel home when I'm in Turkey, and I didn't want this home to be taken from me. I understood that the Turkish people are the ones who defended their country. It wasn't just the military. The military was trying to take it away, but the people were the ones who defended it. Everyone that they, regardless of their political background, decided that they will be on one side against the military rule.
As the artist, I got a lot of inspiration about what happened that night. So I just want to make it commemorate as the art. So I make this piece to make us remember what the togetherness mean, what the togetherness mean, what the unity mean, what the loves mean.
I don't know what to say about what I experienced that night, except that it gave me a very deep-founded respect for the will of the Turkish people in general, right? I didn't understand what was happening, but the Turkish people did, right, that night. They knew that there was a coup going on and that they were going to live or possibly live through similar experiences that they did and their parents and grandparents did over the last several decades here in Turkey. And all of that in the face of the huge advancement in economics, in society, in education, in technology, and everything that's been achieved in Turkey over the past 25 years. I believe that despite the politics here in Turkey, and despite all of the polarization that people try and basically place on Turkey's identity, from the outside especially, from Western media, from media outside of Turkey, even inside Turkey, there's media that tries to polarize the society. But what I realized that night is that Turkish people really understand that they want stability, they want security, they want their country to be a safe place for their families. They want to be a successful country, a modern country, a developed country. And they demonstrated that by going out into the street and defending their democracy and defending their country, basically, standing in the face of tanks and basically staying steadfast despite jets flying over their heads. Even the parliament in Ankara was bombed, and the police headquarters was bombed. And despite all of those things, Turkish people took a stand that night and said, no, we're not gonna let people basically take over our country by force. We're gonna control our country, not We as in the authority or the establishment, we as in the people, the citizens are in control of this country. And it was a beautiful message, I think, to experience as a foreigner. And I think that Turkish people in general appreciate that stand that Turkish citizens took that evening, you know? Even if they're from different opposing sides of the political spectrum here in Turkey, I think both sides appreciate that stand that people took, because otherwise Turkey would have been going in a place that nobody could predict.
It was quite remarkable actually seeing so many people come out in large numbers, charged up for what they believed to be the right cause, a democratic cause.
And something I do admire about Turks is they're kind of scared of nothing, and not in a dangerous way. It's a very kind of courageous thing that they protect each other. They really do protect each other. It's another reason I feel very safe in this country. If anything should go wrong, Turks do not hesitate to come to your defense, even if you're a stranger. If they see someone trying to harm someone else, you know you'll be protected. And suddenly we saw that manifest, you know, on the streets, but in front of these tanks and in front of these soldiers with guns. They just did that. All of them just came out and were protecting each other and protecting themselves and their country. It was just so remarkable, such a unique experience. And that sounds like a trivial word in this context, but it's not, because I cannot imagine anything else being like what we experienced that night. And to see people come together that way, no matter where they stood on the political spectrum, they were all there to protect each other, to help each other, and to work for each other and for this country, to protect this country. And these weren't military people, these weren't police forces, these were just ordinary citizens, my friends and neighbors, that just went out without hesitating and looked tanks in the eye and looked at guns, looked at soldiers with guns at the offices, at the gates of our own offices, and just did it because there was no choice. They weren't going to let this coup happen. And they didn't, they stopped it. And the next day, Turks, as per normal, they went on, and life resumed in the most beautiful way. They were even waiting at restaurants, you know, to get their breakfast, because everyone had been up all night. No one could go back to sleep now. You know, they were out starting to celebrate because they'd overcome, they'd triumphed. And yeah, and we started going back to work, and it was just amazing to see the country rally the way it did in the days and weeks following that night. Incredible.
From Turkish perspective and from Turkish point of view, you have an ecosystem which has been around for more than 20 years now. It's democratic. They've been voted to get to become the ruling party and the ruling power, and they've done a lot of good things, yeah, for Turkey. And then to end all of this with a coup, like with a military, would just, I guess, dishonor what's been done for the last 20 years. Like, you know, whenever you watch all these interesting footages and human rights watches reports, and when you think about the politics of the world and global politics, everybody is 100% claiming that, you know, it should be democracy, it should be the will of people, people should be the one voting and having say in how the place is going to be governed. And to end this in 21st century with a coup attempt and a military, it will be a big disgrace. So from that political point of view, when I saw this happening, I was very happy, because it should not end with a coup, especially after like a couple of different coups in the history, you know, in Turkish history in the last 100 years. It will really be a disgrace. So I really felt relieved, one, because okay, our life is not in danger anymore. We had some plans before, you know, 2 days ago. Now I want to see those plans happening. I grew up in a war-torn country, and I've seen a lot of crazy things being done by people who are literally just courageous, like nothing else. They're just courageous. But you know, people jumping over tanks, jumping over fences to fight an armed person, or just storming down the streets in thousands, without anything like thought about their lives, their families, their pets, their kids. They just got out. Even, you know, as an example, we were sitting with my wife-to-be and her dad calls, and you have a guy screaming to his daughter, "Get out on the streets, I don't care, get out on the streets." You know, nobody does that. That's really something that stayed in my head, because as a normal parent, I don't think any sane, not sane, but any, you know, average person would in this situation instruct their daughters to go out on the streets, because it's literally life risking. And that patriotism and the love for country is so high that they disregard everything else. It was really mind-blowing. So to be able to disregard everything, you know, risk your family, risk your own life, put aside everything, your plans, your hopes, your wishes for the future. And most of these guys are young, you know, that came out. They're not married, they don't have, like, they're just starting to work probably somewhere, you know, between the age of 20 and 30. So the life is just beginning for them. To put all this aside, to go out and you know, save the country, it's like a movie. Like, this happens in movies. This is how I felt. So, and it was an amazing like thing just to experience, because I don't think I'll ever experience Coup again. I'm guessing in my own lifetime. I hope I don't, but I don't think I will. So just to be able to see all of these things really blew my mind out, and really made me feel happy. And I knew from that point on, it's going to be, at least the Coup side of Turkish history will be closed forever. Because once you do this, once you have thousands of people rally down the streets with no guns towards basically military or an unknown threat at that time, you realize that, okay, this victory means a lot for everybody.